and this time we are going to be building an advanced hero section. So we're going to continue from the previous hero section that we worked on 2 weeks ago and just tweak it slightly for a more unique and custom look. So this time around, I'm thinking that we can go for a full width, full height hero section with the text in the center and potentially some more animation involved. So first things first, we're going to select our hero image container, and right now it's set to height 70h, and we're actually going to change it to 100 VH, which basically means 100 view per height. So it'll take up 100% of the height of your screen. This is a really great way to use this because it means regardless of what screen size someone has, it'll always take up the full height of their screen. So similarly, we're also going to set the width to be 100 VW because we also wanted to take the full width of the user's screen. So you'll see now it's kind of going off screen a bit, and that's because the positioning is static. But what we want is we want our image to be positioned absolute behind the text. So once again, with our image selected, we're going to change the position to absolute. And here you can see you have a couple of options. Absolute positioning basically dictates, like, regardless of what other elements are in the container or on your page, this item will go where you want it to go. So it's great for like specifically directing where you want something to be placed. And we wanted to take the full container of its parent element that has a position of relative. So once you've set absolute, it'll tell you what this particular element is relative to. So right now it's relative to our body, which is fine because we only have one section. But if we had more than one section, we wouldn't want it to take the full width of the entire body container because that would mean the entire page. We wanted to take the full width and height of like one section. So in this case, it's our hero section specifically. So if we set that to relative and we go back to our image column, you'll see that now it is relative to our hero section. And then I'm just going to add height 100, I do 100 view per height again for our hero section. So now our image is positioned as absolute. So if I view it on a ledger screen, you'll also notice that it still takes the full width and height of my screen. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our text column and we want it to appear on top. So we're going to go and set the position to be relative and increase the Z index to 1. The Z index basically means it will overlap other elements. Higher the Z index, the more on top that specific element will be. So I believe our image is Z index 0 auto, or I guess 0. And so this is Z index 1, so it'll appear on top of the image. Next thing that I'm going to want to do is go to my hero section and actually change the display to flex because I actually want this particular content to be centered. So I'm going to align it to the middle and justify it centered so it'll appear in the center. Now I finished tweaking my text and you'll see that the white text is now really hard to read on this image background. So we're going to need to add an overlay to our image container to make sure that the text is more legible. So clicking our image container, we're going to add in a new div and we're going to call this hero image overlay. We're also going to set this as absolute because we want it to fill the entire container of the image. And we're going to give it a color like black, but of course make it slightly transparent, or I could have decreased the opacity too. One more thing we're going to do is we want the overlay to make the image below it darker, but not in a way where it's kind of creates a gray cast on the image, which sometimes can happen if you leave the blending at normal, but we wanted to essentially multiply the colors in the image to make them darker. So we're going to change our blending mode to multiply. For this particular image, you don't see that much of a difference, but if your image had more brighter colors on it, you'd notice a difference between applying blending mode on multiply versus on, normal or any other setting. So I like to do that if I just want to make sure my image is a bit darker. So now we've added that overlay, you can see that our text is much clearer than before, which is great. The last step that we're going to do is we want to add some transition or animation to this section. So essentially, if somebody loads this page, we want the text to animate in some way. And maybe we even want the image to animate in. So first we're just going to select the entire hero section, and we're going to add an interaction called scroll into view, start an animation, and we're going to create a new animation. So this is going to be hero animation. So when this section is scrolled into view, so essentially when the page is loaded, we're going to want to do a couple of things. The first thing that we'll start with is our text. So we want our text to animate in, but we want them to animate in or slide in at different intervals. So let's say, for example, we start with our heading text. We can say we want its original positioning to be a bit lower than it currently is now, like 5 rem. Same with the subredding. We also want that to be positioned a bit lower, 5 rem. Same with our form block. We also want that to be positioned lower, 5 rem. And we're also going to do an animation for the image. So initially, we want the scaling of our image to be, let's say, 1. So its original sizing. Now, once this section is loaded in, we want a couple of things to happen. First thing with the image, maybe we want to zoom in on it a bit, like 1.1. So we're going to increase the scaling for that. Same thing with our text. We're going to want to move them back to their original positioning. One more thing that we're going to want to do that I previously didn't do is we want to set the opacity for these text elements initially to 0 as well, so that you don't actually see them moving in, but they fade in as they're sliding up. So now that I've added in all those different animations, let's preview it. And that looks pretty good. The only other thing I want to do is just tweak it slightly. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe increase the duration of the scaling to like 1 second. I'm also going to select all of these and change the easing to something like outsign. So what I actually want to do is I want to create a staggered effect for the text so they all don't fade and slide in at the same time. So I'm going to select my main heading, and that's going to animate originally. And then I'm going to select the subheading, and I'm going to give it a delay of 0.2. And then same thing with the form block. I'm going to give that a delay of 0.4. And then we're going to preview how that looks. I'm also going to add in a delay for the opacity as well, so that it also has that similar delay effect, and then see how that looks. Yeah, and I think that looks much better and a more interesting animation. So let's publish this and actually preview what it looks like on the live window. And here we have our live page, and if we refresh, we can see that animation occurs as intended. So hopefully these different hero sections can be useful for you to learn, and you have new ideas of how to build your own hero sections. And super excited to dive into our next topic in 2 weeks. But till next time, bye.